Trump's trade war has completely backfired, and the numbers are absolutely devastating. Canadian buyers are abandoning the U.S. housing market in droves, with searches down a staggering 20% from last year. This isn't just some minor market fluctuation. This is a full-scale retreat from America's biggest international housing market buyers, and it's all thanks to Trump's reckless tariff policies. So what exactly happened here? How did Trump manage to torpedo a multi-billion-dollar relationship with our closest trading partner? And why should Americans care about Canadians fleeing our housing market? To understand the magnitude of this disaster, we need to look at just how important Canadian buyers have been to the U.S. real estate market. Canadians typically make up the largest share of foreign buyers who purchase homes in the U.S., accounting for 13% of all foreign buyers and purchasing an estimated $5.9 billion in U.S. real estate in 2024 alone. That's not pocket change. That's a massive economic relationship that Trump has systematically destroyed through his aggressive trade policies.
The Indian Prime Minister Modi go to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit that took place in Tianjin 2 weeks ago, which was clearly, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and India getting together to thumb their nose at Trump. So I think what is interesting, it's an admission on the part of Trump that he needs help to achieve his goal. And I think there is an opening for Canada and allies to say, okay, if you need our help, well, let's work together, but we need to be clear on what exactly we are trying to achieve here. And for instance, we would need a clear confirmation on the part of the U.S. that they would provide security. They would give security guarantees to Ukraine to prevent further invasion from Russia. But we need a lot more details on.
The former Canadian ambassador to China recently revealed what's really happening behind the scenes. Trump's disastrous diplomatic failures have left him scrambling for help, essentially asking allies to do the heavy lifting while he avoids taking real action himself. The ambassador noted that Trump hasn't increased his own tariffs on China because he knows China would immediately retaliate by stopping exports of rare earths and magnets to the U.S. Instead, Trump is trying to get Canada and other allies to take the economic hits while he claims credit. The decline didn't happen overnight. It started the moment Trump took office and began his tariff threats. The number of Canadians searching for U.S. homes started dropping significantly in February, when the White House implemented 25% tariffs on imports from Canada. But that was just the beginning of Trump's economic assault on our northern neighbors. The real damage came in April, when Trump doubled down on his trade war strategy. The steepest decline was a 34.2% year-over-year drop in April, the month the Trump administration announced its global tariff policy. Think about that for a moment. A third of Canadian interest in U.S. real estate evaporated in a single month because of Trump's policies. Real estate agents across the country are feeling the impact firsthand. Heather Mahmood Corley, a Redfin Premier agent in Phoenix, said she normally works with 5 Canadian buyers each spring, but this year there were none. 0. That's not just a statistical anomaly, that's a complete market collapse. And it's not just Phoenix. The damage is spreading across the entire country like wildfire. Canadian searches for U.S. homes have fallen in 46 of the 50 largest U.S. metros. Only 4 major metropolitan areas are seeing increased Canadian interest, while the other 46 are watching their international buyer base disappear. The hardest hit areas tell the story of Trump's economic incompetence. The biggest decline in Canadian interest is in big cities. Searches in Houston dropped 55% year over year in May, 53% in Philadelphia, and 47% in Chicago. These aren't small tourist towns. These are major American cities losing massive amounts of international investment because of Trump's failed policies. Florida, traditionally the #1 destination for Canadian buyers, is getting absolutely hammered. West Palm Beach, FL saw the biggest decline with a 26.6% year-over-year drop in August. 2 other Florida metros, Tampa, 23.1%, and Orlando, 23%, are also among the 10 metros where the number of Canadians searching for U.S. homes fell most. This is particularly devastating because Florida has always been the crown jewel of Canadian real estate investment in America. But Trump's tariffs aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they're having real-world consequences for real people. Real estate agents are reporting that people from Canada are retreating from owning real estate in the US because of political tensions. One agent in Las Vegas shared a story that perfectly captures the damage Trump has done. One Canadian client is in the process of selling his last US property because he no longer sees it as a good place to invest or vacation. He used to own 4 homes in the Las Vegas area, which he mainly rented to fellow Canadians here for casinos or poker events. But now he no longer wants ties to the US. This is what Trump's America First policies have actually achieved, driving away our closest allies and biggest investors. The man who claimed he would make America great again is systematically destroying our international relationships and our economy. And it's not just about real estate. This Canadian exodus from US housing is part of a broader pattern of deteriorating relationships between our countries. The slowdown in Canadian interest in US homes is just the latest sign of a frosty US-Canada relationship. International tourism has been declining at Niagara Falls State Park in New York since the beginning of the year, and the number of Canadians driving to the US is way down. But here's what makes this even more infuriating. Trump's tariffs are also devastating the US housing market from the inside. Builders estimate that tariffs already in place have raised the cost of constructing an average home by $9,200. So not only are we losing billions in Canadian investment, but we're also making homes more expensive for American families. It's a lose-lose situation that only Trump could have engineered. The construction industry is being hit from both sides. The tariffs will raise the cost of materials, which could directly increase the cost of constructing new homes, according to economists. Meanwhile, we're simultaneously losing the international buyers who would help absorb some of that increased housing supply. Trump's defenders might argue that these tariffs are necessary for national security or trade balance. But that argument falls apart when you look at the actual impact. Experts are concerned about the immediate impact that tariffs on softwood lumber, imported from Canada, could have on the U.S. housing market, driving up costs and potentially discouraging builders from manufacturing much-needed new homes. We're in the middle of a housing affordability crisis, and Trump's solution is to make housing more expensive while driving away international buyers. The Canadian housing market is also feeling the pressure from Trump's policies. Sales for all housing classes, including condo apartments and townhouses in February, dropped 10.4% from a year ago and 9.8% from a month earlier. The decline in existing home sales comes as new home construction also declined in Canada. This creates a vicious cycle where Canadian buyers who might have been interested in U.S. real estate are instead dealing with their own housing market problems. What's particularly telling is how quickly this relationship deteriorated once Trump took office. The moment tariffs were first announced on January 20th, a gap opened between home sales recorded this year and last. This trend continued to widen throughout February, leading to a significant but hardly surprising drop in monthly activity. Trump's policies had an immediate and devastating impact on cross-border real estate investment. The human cost of Trump's trade war extends beyond just real estate transactions. Canadian opinions of the United States have plummeted to historic lows. Only 22% of Canadians surveyed had confidence in Trump doing the right thing regarding world affairs, compared to 52% who had confidence in President Biden. This isn't just about policy disagreements, this is about fundamental trust and respect between neighboring countries. Trump's repeated suggestions that Canada should become the 51st state haven't helped matters. These inflammatory comments, combined with punitive tariffs, have created an atmosphere of hostility that's driving away Canadian investment and tourism. Former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused Trump of trying to trigger a total collapse of the Canadian economy to make annexation easier. Whether that was Trump's intention or not, his policies are certainly achieving the first part: economic damage. The ripple effects of this Canadian exodus are being felt throughout the U.S. economy. Real estate agents who specialized in working with Canadian clients are seeing their businesses collapse. Marcia McMahon-Jones, a Redfin Premier agent in Palm Springs, noted that it has been at least a year since she last worked with a Canadian buyer. I'm in touch with a few potential buyers, but they're staying put in Canada for now with the idea of potentially making a move if and when Canada-US relations improve. These agents built their careers on cross-border relationships that Trump has systematically destroyed. Parliamentary exchanges in Canada reveal just how damaged the relationship has become. Opposition members have criticized their prime minister for his rare presence in Washington, questioning his engagement with the U.S. administration. The prime minister's response? He maintains communication through text messages, but emphasizes that Canada's priority now is diversifying trade relationships with Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America, rather than focusing solely on the United States. Trump's hostility has literally driven Canada to look elsewhere for economic partnerships. The construction industry is facing a perfect storm of challenges thanks to Trump's policies. Not only are material costs rising due to tariffs, but the industry is also facing potential labor shortages from Trump's immigration crackdowns. Any restrictions that slow migration or deport immigrants is likely to result in higher construction costs, since immigrants make up roughly 30% of the construction labor force. This would in turn further strain housing supply and push up prices. So we have higher material costs, potential labor shortages, and fewer international buyers, a trifecta of economic incompetence. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that it was entirely predictable and entirely avoidable. Canada is our closest ally, our largest trading partner, and historically our most reliable source of international real estate investment. Trump took this stable, profitable relationship and blew it up for short-term political gain. The data shows just how dramatic this shift has been. While Canadian searches for U.S. homes are down 20% overall, the declines in specific markets are even more severe. Across the country, Canada-based searches dropped about 23% for homes in Phoenix and Palm Springs, California. These are markets that have traditionally depended on Canadian snowbirds and vacation home buyers. The economic impact extends beyond just lost sales. When Canadians buy homes in the United States, they're not just making a one-time purchase. They're contributing to local economies through property taxes, maintenance, renovations, and local spending during their visits. A Canadian who owns a vacation home in Florida might spend thousands of dollars annually in that local community. Multiply that by thousands of properties, and you're talking about hundreds of millions in lost economic activity. Trump's supporters might argue that this creates opportunities for American buyers, but that ignores the reality of housing market economics. International buyers, particularly Canadians, often purchase properties in markets where there's excess supply or in luxury segments that don't compete directly with first-time American homebuyers. Their withdrawal doesn't necessarily make housing more affordable for Americans. It just reduces overall market activity and property values. The lumber industry provides a perfect example of Trump's economic illiteracy. Canada supplies about 85% of U.S. softwood lumber imports. Instead of maintaining this efficient supply chain, Trump has imposed tariffs that drive up construction costs for American builders and homebuyers. U.S. lumber futures skyrocketed over the past week after Trump announced that 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico were coming into effect on March 4th, but the surge stopped once the president said on Thursday that the tariffs would be delayed for a month for most goods coming from the two neighbors. Lumber prices fell by more than 6% over 2 days after Thursday's pause. The market volatility caused by Trump's erratic tariff announcements is creating uncertainty that hurts both American builders and Canadian suppliers. Meanwhile, the economic devastation continues to mount. Canada's unemployment has risen to 7.1%, the highest in 4 years. Their GDP shrank 1.6% in the second quarter, and productivity dropped 1%. Economists are warning that Canada is not recession-ready, with both public and private sectors cutting jobs simultaneously. Employment insurance coverage is at its lowest since 1941, covering only 32.8% of workers. This means people who lose jobs risk losing their homes. Trump's trade war isn't just hurting abstract economic indicators, it's destroying real lives and families, while Trump doubles down on failed policies. Canada is responding to Trump's economic aggression by developing its own housing policies that reduce dependence on the United States. In the face of President Trump's tariffs, we need to build for Canadians, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said this week, pitching tens of billions in housing investment as a kind of industrial policy response to Trump. Indeed, that Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau last month and will lead Canada's Liberal Party into an election on April 28th, is in this position at all is thanks to Trump's seismic effect on politics in Canada. Trump's policies are literally reshaping Canadian politics and pushing them toward greater self-sufficiency and reduced reliance on American markets.
Again, because there is a relatively strong relationship already between the two different free trade agreements, I think the biggest issue here is going to be how the two countries coalesce and whether or not they can agree to kind of work together in terms of negotiating with the American government, especially on the sectoral sanctions. I mean, the auto market in particular is one that is very heavily diversified between the three different countries, with one vehicle often crossing a dozen, 24 times between the three before it's completed. So I think getting aligned on autos in particular is incredibly important to the Carney government and also to the Sheinbaum government in Mexico. I do think that we are probably going to have to brace ourselves for some kind of raising questions of, is there going to be a new deal between the two countries? And to know that that's not really, I think, the aim. The aim here is just solidifying the relationship and solidifying a strategy to handle the Americans.
How crucial is it for
Canadian officials are now actively working to strengthen trade relationships with Mexico and other partners, recognizing that American trade disruptions require new strategies. The focus on integrated sectors like automobiles, where vehicles cross borders dozens of times during production, shows how Trump's simplistic tariff approach ignores the complex reality of modern supply chains. Canada and Mexico are aligning their strategies to handle American trade uncertainty together, essentially working around Trump rather than with him. The mortgage and banking sectors are also feeling the impact of Trump's trade war. With an ongoing U.S. trade war at hand, U.S. President Trump's tariffs are pounding through supply chains like a jackhammer, rattling businesses' bottom lines and consumer confidence on both sides of the border. For Canadian homeowners, the costs could show up in job losses, higher consumer prices, and housing market uncertainty. Not knowing where mortgage rates will end up isn't helping. This uncertainty is making Canadian consumers more cautious about major purchases like real estate, whether in Canada or the United States. The data from Redfin tells a clear story of economic damage that keeps getting worse. Canadian interest in U.S. homes dropped 26% year over year in May, marking the fourth straight month of double-digit declines. This isn't a temporary dip or seasonal variation. This is a sustained trend of Canadian withdrawal from U.S. real estate markets. What's particularly damaging is that this decline is happening during what should be peak buying season. This year's spring home buying season was anything but in many places. The traditional spring surge in real estate activity was muted partly because of the loss of Canadian buyers who would normally be active during this period. The geographic spread of the decline shows that this isn't just about specific markets or property types. It's a broad-based retreat. At a metro level, Redfin said fewer Canadians are searching for homes in all but 2 of the 50 largest U.S. metros, Indianapolis and Austin. Only 2 markets out of 50 are seeing increased Canadian interest, while the other 48 are experiencing declines. That's not a market correction, that's a market collapse. The construction industry is particularly vulnerable to these combined pressures. Small construction businesses, which comprise 80% of the industry, could be hit hardest by the tariffs. With slimmer profit margins, these firms struggle to absorb rising costs. New home construction, already challenged by labor shortages and disrupted supply chains, faces added strain from tariff-induced hikes. These are the backbone businesses of American construction, and Trump's policies are systematically undermining their viability. The irony is that Trump claimed his policies would help American workers and businesses, but the evidence shows the opposite. Higher construction costs mean fewer construction jobs. Reduced international investment means less economic activity. Strained relationships with our closest trading partner mean lost opportunities across multiple sectors. Even Trump's own administration has had to acknowledge the problems with their tariff strategy. The surge stopped once the president said on Thursday that the tariffs would be delayed for a month for most goods coming from the two neighbors. These constant delays and reversals show that Trump's team understands their policies are causing problems, but they're too proud or too stubborn to admit their mistakes and change course. The housing market data provides a real-time measure of Trump's economic competence, and the results are unambiguous. He's failing. The number of Canadian Redfin.com users searching for homes to buy or rent in the U.S. dropped 19.5% year over year in August. This isn't fake news or biased reporting. This is hard data from one of the country's largest real estate platforms showing the direct impact of Trump's policies. What makes this even more frustrating is that the solution is obvious: stop the trade war and restore normal relations with Canada. But Trump's ego and his misguided belief in the effectiveness of tariffs prevent him from taking the steps necessary to repair the damage he's caused. Instead, we're watching billions of dollars in investment and economic activity disappear, while Trump doubles down on failed policies.
We're starting to see the impact of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs as they begin to hit the Canadian economy. Here's a look at some of the latest data points to underscore that. The unemployment rate in August ticked up to 7.1%. That's the highest level in 4 years. The Canadian economy shrank by 1.6% in the second quarter of the year. And during that same period, Canada's productivity dropped by 1%, the biggest plunge in 3 years. These trends will likely factor into the Bank of Canada's next interest rate announcement Wednesday, as well as this fall's much anticipated federal budget, which the Prime Minister has said will be one of both austerity and investment. So, can the feds achieve both? And what is the biggest threat to Canada's economy right now? With me today is Business Council of Canada President and CEO Goldie Hyder. Next to him, Najoud Al-Maliz is an economics reporter for the Globe and Mail. And rounding us out today, economist and Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers, Armin Yalnizyan. Hi, everybody. Such a pleasure to see you. I appreciate you making the time.
The Canadian real estate market exodus is just one example of how Trump's America First rhetoric translates into America Alone reality. By alienating our closest allies and trading partners, Trump is making America weaker, not stronger. The housing market data proves it, the construction industry knows it, and real estate agents are living it every day. Trump's tariffs haven't made America great again. They've made America expensive, isolated, and economically vulnerable. The 20% decline in Canadian housing searches is just the beginning. If Trump continues on this path, we can expect further deterioration in cross-border economic relationships and continued damage to American industries that depend on international trade and investment. The question isn't whether Trump's policies are working. The data clearly shows they're not. The question is how much more damage he'll be allowed to cause before someone with actual economic competence takes charge and starts repairing the relationships Trump has destroyed. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how Trump's other failed policies are damaging the American economy, check out our other videos. And if you want to stay updated on the real impact of Trump's trade wars and economic policies, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analysis of how Trump's incompetence is making America weaker, not stronger.